John Wayne's saddest night on Johnny Carson. The moment the cowboy's smile faded loudly broken. The studio lights were bright that night, but somehow the room felt darker than usual. Johnny Carson sat behind his desk, waiting for his next guest. Then the familiar applause began. John Wayne walked onto the stage. The audience rose to its feet. For decades, John Wayne had been the face of the American West, the tall cowboy, the strong voice, the man who seemed as if nothing in the world could ever break him. But that night, something was different. He smiled. He waved. He shook Johnny Carson's hand. And then he slowly took his seat. Johnny looked at him carefully. "Duke, it's good to have you here." Wayne smiled and answered in his deep, unforgettable voice. "Good to be here, Johnny." The audience laughed and applauded. For a few minutes, everything felt normal. Johnny joked with him about Western movies, horses, Hollywood, and the legendary image of John Wayne. Wayne laughed. But then Johnny asked a simple question. "After everything you've accomplished, what matters most to you now?" The laughter disappeared. Wayne leaned back. For several seconds, he said nothing. The man who had faced outlaws, gunfights, storms, and countless enemies on the silver screen suddenly looked like an ordinary human being. He looked down. Then he quietly said that fame wasn't what mattered most. It was family. It was the people who had stood beside him when the cameras were gone. Johnny listened without interrupting. Wayne continued, his voice softer than usual. "When you get older, Johnny, you start realizing that all those pictures, all those movies, they don't follow you home." The studio became completely silent. Wayne looked toward the audience. "You remember the people." Johnny Carson lowered his eyes. For once, the famous host didn't have a joke ready. Wayne spoke about getting older and about how quickly life seemed to pass. He remembered the younger man he had once been, the hungry actor who wanted nothing more than to make it in Hollywood. He had spent his life becoming John Wayne. But beneath the legend was a man who had experienced loss, disappointment, friendship, love, and regret. He paused. Then he smiled faintly. "You know, Johnny, when you're young, you think you've got forever." Johnny nodded. Wayne continued. "Then one day you look around and realize forever was never promised." Those words seemed to hang in the studio. The audience was silent. Johnny finally asked, "Do you ever miss the old days?" Wayne looked straight ahead. "All the time." Then he smiled again. "But I wouldn't trade them." There was something heartbreaking about that answer. Because it wasn't anger in his voice. It was gratitude. Gratitude mixed with sadness. Wayne had played heroes for generations, but that night he didn't need a script. He simply talked about life. Johnny tried to bring some humor back into the conversation, and Wayne played along. The audience laughed. For a moment, the sadness lifted. But when the laughter faded, Johnny looked at him again. There was a long pause. Then Johnny said something simple. "Duke, you've given people a lot of memories." Wayne nodded. "And they've given me a few." The audience applauded. Wayne looked toward them. His eyes appeared tired. But his smile was genuine. He raised his hand slightly, almost as if saying goodbye. Johnny Carson reached over and shook his hand. The two men smiled at each other. No dramatic music. No grand speech. Just two old friends sitting beneath television lights, knowing that time waits for nobody. As John Wayne stood up, the audience gave him another standing ovation. He turned toward them. The applause grew louder. For decades, audiences had watched him ride across dusty landscapes, confront danger, protect the innocent, and walk away from impossible situations. But that night, they weren't applauding the cowboy. They were applauding the man. John Wayne slowly walked off the stage. Johnny watched him disappear behind the curtain. And for a moment, the cameras remained on Carson. His smile had faded. He looked down at his desk. Then he quietly took a breath and continued the show. But something had changed. The audience had just witnessed something rare. The legend had allowed them to see the man behind the legend. John Wayne was never truly just a cowboy. He was a son, a father, a friend, a husband, an actor, and eventually, an aging man who understood something every person eventually learns. The applause ends. The lights go out. The cameras stop rolling. But the memories remain. And perhaps that was the saddest and most beautiful part of John Wayne's night with Johnny Carson. The cowboy didn't need to say goodbye. His silence said enough. And somewhere beyond the bright studio lights, time was already moving forward. John Wayne had spent his life playing men who never seemed afraid of anything. But that night, he reminded America that even the strongest heroes are human. And sometimes, the bravest thing a man can do is simply admit that he misses the days that can never come back. Loudly broken.